So the question is called 3 in 1. So here we need to use a single array to implement 3 stacks in one array. So we have an array like this, so we have to implement 3 stacks by using this array. So as you remember, when we are creating a stack using array, we were allocating all cells for only one stack over here. But in this case, the question says that we have to use this array over here to create 3 stacks in this case. So we can solve this problem in various ways, but here I will show you how to solve it with a fixed division approach. So here we can divide this array into 3 equal parts and allow the individual stack to grow in that limited space over here. So as you can see in our array over here, we have 9 cells. So this means that if I create 3 stacks over here, in each stack we will have 3 cells. So if I divide it like this, so the first stack's elements will be located in these cells over here, which are 0, 1, and 2. And the second stack will be located in these cells over here, and the third stack will be located in these cells over here, which are located at the index of 6, 7, and 8. So how can we divide this array to get 3 equal parts? So as I mentioned here, I'm going to show you the fixed division approach. Now in our case, in stack 1 we will have these indexes, in stack 2 we will have these indexes, and in stack 3 we will have these indexes, which are 6, 7, and 8. Now we have 9 elements in this case. So if the number of cells in our array over here is n, so we can divide this array equally like this. So here, if I divide n by 3, in this case where you see the square brackets, it means that this element is included. When you see a simple bracket over here, it means that this element is not included. So in our case, n is 9. So if I divide n by 3, I'm getting 3. This means that the index of 3 will not be included, so we are including only 0, 1, and 2. Then for the second stack, we can write our equation like this. So this one, in this case, n divided by 3 is included over here. So as you see, I have provided over here square brackets, but this part will not be included. In this case, we are multiplying n by 2 and dividing by 3. So in our case, n is 9. So 9 multiplied by 2 is 18. So 18 divided by 3 is 6. So as you can see, I have put over here simple square over here. So this means that the index of 6 is not included over here. So as you can see, in the second stack, it starts from the index of 3 and it continues until index of 6. So 6 is not included. The last element in this stack is index of 5. Now, finally, for the last stack, we can write equation like this. So in this case, so 2 multiplied by n divided by 3 is included and until the n. So we know that the number of elements in this case is 9, but the last index is 8. Because here the index starts from 0, so that's why the last index is 8. So the n itself is not included over here because n is 9, so we don't have an index of 9 in this case. So with this, by using this logic over here, we can divide this array into 3 parts and we can implement all 3 stacks in this array over here. So now let's see how this is working in practice. So I'm going to implement one class in which we can use all operations that we have discussed in stack section for these 3 stacks over here. So let's head over to Java. Now here I'm going to create 3-in-1 class to implement 3 stacks in one array over here. So I'm going to create a new file which is called 3in1.java. Now inside this file I'm going to declare our class like this. So public class 3in1. So in this class we are going to implement all methods that we are going to implement for these 3 stacks over here. So here the first variable that I'm going to create, in this case I'm going to create number of stacks. So as we mentioned before, the number of stacks should be this 3. So this is going to be private variable, so I'm going to create it like this, private int. So number of stacks will be 3 because in our question it says that the number of stacks is 3. So this is by default is 3. Now the second variable that I'm going to create over here is going to be the stack capacity. So first we need to identify how many elements we will have in each stack. So in this case, it's going to be like this, private int stack capacity. So based on this stack capacity, we are going to identify the number of elements in our array. Because in each stack, for example, if we have 3 stacks over here, and in each stack we have 3 elements, so in our array we must have 9 cells because 3 multiplied 3 is 9. Now the next thing that I'm going to create over here will be the type of integer values. So this is the array in which we will keep our stack elements value. Now the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to create one more variable over here which will be the type of integer array, and here is going to keep the sizes of each array in this case. So in this array we are going to keep the sizes The first thing that I'm going to do, I need to create constructor over here, which will initialize the array in the memory. So the constructor will be like this, public 3-in-1. So as a parameter, it's going to take the stack size. So stack size. So we need to identify how many elements will be in one stack. So it will come from the parameter. Then this parameter will be set to this stack variable over here. So it's going to be like this. So stack capacity equals to stack size that comes from this parameter. Then we are going to initialize values array over here. Now the number of elements in our values array will depend on the stack size and the number of stacks. So in this case, it's going to be like this, values equal new integer. So we should provide the number of elements. So the number of elements will be stack size multiplied with number of stacks. So the number of stacks is by default 3. We can put 3 over here, or we can put this variable, because in this variable we have saved the 3. Then I'm going to initialize the sizes of the stacks over here. So the sizes will equal to new integer number of stacks. So in this case, we will have 3 stacks in our case. So in this case, we will have 3 stacks in our array. So in this case, I'm going to initialize the sizes array with the number of 3, because we will have only 3 stacks. So in this sizes array, we are going to keep the sizes of stacks. Now here, after creating the stack over here, the first thing that I'm going to do, I need to create methods over here. So the first method that I'm going to create is full method. Then I will continue to create is empty, because these methods over here are helper methods. So first I need to create these methods, then I will continue to the main methods, which are pop and push methods. So in this case, for is full method, I'm going to declare it like this, public is full. So in this case, it returns boolean. We know that if our stack is full, it's going to return true, otherwise it's going to return false. So as you remember, when we are creating a stack, is full method does not take any parameter. But in this case, it has to take parameter, because based on the stack number, we will identify that this stack will be empty or not. Because in this case, we have 3 stacks in one array. So based on the stack index over here, we will identify that this stack is full or not. So it's possible that we can run this is full method for index of 0, which is stack 1. It might return true. For example, for the index of 2, it might return false, because in the third stacks we might have place for the next element. So that's why it might return false. So that's why for these cases, we need to have stack number over here as a parameter. So then we are going to check that if the size of stack based on this stack number over here is equal to the capacity, we know that we have declared the capacity over here. In this case, it means that this stack is full, so we can return false, otherwise we are going to return true. So here it's going to be like this. If we are taking the size from the sizes array over here, so in the sizes array, we have the sizes of stacks. So if the size of the index that comes from the parameter stack number is equal to the capacity of the stack, so for example, the capacity of stack is declared as a 3 and the size of stack is 2. So in this case, this is not full, but if both of them is 3, in this case, this is full. So in this case, I'm going to return true. Otherwise, in all cases, we are going to return false. So this means that we have still cells in our stacks over here. Now with this, we have completed is full method. So here, what we are doing it, we are taking the stack size from this sizes array over here and checking that if it has reached to the capacity or not. So if it is reached the capacity, it means that it is full, otherwise it's not full. Then we are going to create our isEmpty method. So isEmpty method will be like this. So once again, we are going to check that based on this size array over here. If the size of any stack over here is equal to 0, it means that we don't have any element in this case, because when we are initializing this sizes array over here, by default, all cells holds the value of 0. So in this case, if it is 0, it means that it's empty, otherwise it's not empty. So the method will be like this. Public boolean is empty. So one more time, as a parameter, is going to take stack number, because in this case, as I mentioned before, we are going to check based on the stack index. So one stack might be empty, another one might not be empty. So that's why we have to check based on the stack index over here. So if sizes stack number as an index is equal to 0, it means that this stack is empty. So in this case, we are returning true. Otherwise, we are going to return false. So here, one more time, I want to mention that this stack number is the index of the stack. So if we have 3 stacks over here, the index of last stack is 2. So here we need to put the index of stack, not the number of stack. So then the next method here I'm going to create, which will be useful for our dequeue and enqueue methods. It will be another helper function which will return the index of top element in a given stack over here. So this method is responsible for returning the index of top element in any given stack over here. So I'm going to create this method like this, private int. So it's going to return integer because the index is integer, index of top. So this one also will take as a parameter stack number. So based on the stack number, we are going to identify the index of given stack. So in this case, the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to create a variable like this, offset variable, which equal to stack number multiply stack capacity. So for example, the stack capacity is 3 and we are looking for the index of 0. In this case, this offset variable will be 0 because the stack number is 0 and we are multiplying it with capacity. It's becoming 0. So we are going to use this one, this offset variable over here. Then you will understand why we are creating it like this. So the next variable that I'm going to create over here is going to be size. So we know that we can take size from the size array. So based on the stack number index, we can identify the size of stack. Then we will return offset plus size minus 1. So for example, in this case, as I mentioned, if we have two elements in our stack 1 and we are looking the index of the top element, so we know that index of the top element in this case is 1 because we have two elements. So the first element is located at the index of 0 and the second element is located at the index of 1. So in this case, 0 will be multiplied with the capacity, which is 3. We are getting 0 over here. And the size of this stack, as we mentioned, is 2. So 0 plus 2 minus 1 is going to return 1. So because in this case, our top element is located at the index of 1. So with this method over here, we can easily identify the top element in our given stack over here. So this method will be used inside push and pop methods. So that's why this is going to be very useful in our cases. Now the next thing that I'm going to do over here is I'm going to create push method. So public push. So let me just comment out over here push. So here we are going to put index of top. Now our push method will be like this, public void push. So we know that in case of stack, push method is responsible to insert elements to the stack. So normally here we have one parameter, which is the value that we are going to insert to the stack. But in this case, as I mentioned, we have 3 stacks. So we have to identify in which stack we are going to push the element. So that's why I'm going to put first parameter stack number, which will be the stack index. And the second parameter will be the value that we want to insert to this stack over here. So then the first thing we are going to check, if this stack is full, then in this case we are going to return saying that stack is full. Otherwise we are going to continue to implement the operations over here. So we know that isFull method takes a parameter stack number. So the stack number comes from this parameter. So with this stack number that comes from the parameter, we can identify that if a given stack is full or not. So we are going to write if condition like this. If is full with the parameter that comes from the stack number. So in this case, the stack is full, so we cannot insert any element. So here I'm going to return to the console saying that println the stack is full. So in this case, we cannot continue our operation. Otherwise, in the else condition, we are going to insert this element to this stack over here. So how can we insert this? So the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to increase the size of given stack. Then after increasing the size, the index of top element will be changed because in this case we are finding the index of top element based on the size. Then we are going to assign to this value over here. So it's going to be like this. So sizes based on the stack number, we are going to increase it by 1. Then we are going to assign the value which is located at the top index of this stack over here. So we are going to update value cells. In this case, we are going to call index of top of this given stack over here will be set to value. So with this, we have successfully inserted an element to this stack over here. So let's say in our first stack, we have only 2 elements and the stack capacity is 3. So by increasing stack size by 1, we are taking the top of this stack to the index of 2 because before it was 1, then by adding 1, we are making it 2. So based on index of top of this stack over here, we are updating the value to this cell over here. So with this, we have successfully inserted an element to the given stack over here. Now the next method that we are going to implement is pop method. So we know that in case of stack, the pop method is responsible to return the top element from the stack and removing that element from the stack over here. So in this case, I'm going to declare it like this: public int pop. So as a parameter, this one also will take the stack number because we are going to pop elements from a given stack. Then the first thing that we are going to check if this stack is empty or not. So if this stack is empty, we are going to return -1 and saying that this stack is empty. So we cannot pop out any element from this stack over here. So it's going to be like this: if is empty for the parameter of stack number, then in this case we are printing out to the console saying that the stack is empty. Then we are returning -1 in this case. Now in the else condition, we are going to implement the logic for popping out element from a given stack over here. Now the first thing that I'm going to do over here, I'm going to create a variable which will be the top index. So this will take the index of top of this given stack over here. So I'm going to call index of top method based on this stack over here. So we know that index of top method returns the top index of a given stack. Then the next thing that we are going to do, we are going to take the value that is located at the top of this stack over here. So I'm going to create a new value which will be the return of this method over here. So values that comes from the top index. Now we know that at the top index, this stack's top element is located. Then we are going to set this cell's value to 0 because in this case we have to delete this one from the memory. So in this case it's going to equal to 0. So when it is 0, it means that we don't have an element in this cell over here. Now the next thing, we know that it's obvious that if we are popping an element from the stack, so we have to decrease the size of stacks. So we have to update the sizes array based on the stack number over here. So it's going to be decreased by 1. Then at the end, we are going to return the value that we are removing from this stack. So this value is located at value variable over here. So we are returning value over here. So with this, we have successfully implemented our pop method. So basically what we are doing over here is first we are checking that if stack is empty or not. So if it is empty, we are returning the message that it's empty. Otherwise, we are going to find the top index of this stack. And based on this index, we are taking the value from the values array. Then we are setting this value to 0 and we are decreasing the stack size by 1 and we are returning this value to the console. Now the last method that we are going to implement over here, we know that in case of stacks, we have pick method. So pick method is responsible just returning of the top element from the stack, but it's not removing that element from the stack. So in this case, pick method will be like this. So public int, so this one also will return the integer variable because our stack is the type of integer. So this one also will take as a parameter stack number because we have 3 stacks over here. So we need to identify for which stack we are calling this pick method. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to call is empty method. So this part of the code will be the same as pop method. So I'm just going to copy it from here and pass it over here. But in the else condition, in case of pop method, we were removing that element from the stack, but in this case, we are not removing it. We are just returning the value of the top of given stack. So in this case, it's going to be like this: values index of top of given stack. So stack now. So with this, we are finding top index of this stack. So based on that one, we are returning value from this values array over here. So with this, we have successfully implemented pick method in this case. Now after implementation, now let's see how this method works in practice. So here inside this main method, I'm going to create an instance of this 3-in-1 class. So it's going to be like this: 3-in-1. So I'm going to create new stacks is equal to new 3-in-1. So we are going to set each stack size to 3. So in this case, we have 3 stacks. So the size of array in this case will be 9. So here, the first thing that I'm going to check, is full method, then is empty method. Then I'm going to put some elements to these stacks over here to see how this is working. So here, I'm going to call first is full method. So based on this one, I will put something like this: new stack is full. So for example, I'm going to check the first stack. So the index of first stack is 0. So I need to create a variable over here, which will take the return of this stack to print out to the console. So it's going to be the type of Boolean because its full method returns Boolean variable. So it's going to be result is equal to like this. Then I'm going to print out this result to the console. So system out print. So let's print out this result to the console to see how this is working. So if I run our code, now in this case it says that the first stack over here is not full, so that's why it's returning false over here. Now if I put, for example, so for the last stack over here, the index of 2 is going to return false in this case as well. So as you see, it returns false in this case as well. So our isFull method works the way that we want. Now let's continue to check isEmpty method. So instead of isFull method, I'm going to put here isEmpty. Now we know that all stacks over here is empty, so it should return true in this case as well. So if I run our code, for example, we are checking for the stack number 3, which is located at the index of 2. So in this case, you see that it returns true. So if I run it, for example, for first stack over here, in this case also it's going to return true. Now you see that in this case, it returns also true. So this means that all stacks over here are empty. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to push some elements to these stacks over here. Then I'm going to call pop and pick methods to check that if these elements are pushed over here or not. So first I'm going to push elements to the first stack over here. So I'm going to call new stacks like this. Then I'm going to call push method. For example, with the index of 0, I'm going to put 1. Then I'm just going to copy this code from here, pass it several times. So second element will also be inserted to the first stack. So then I'm going to insert, for example, to the second stack, the value of 4, for example. Then I'm going to insert one more time to the second stack, the value of 5. Then I'm going to insert to the third stack the value of, for example, 8 in this case. Now after doing so I'm going to change this result type to the integer. So here I'm going to call pop method. So for example, I'm going to call pop method from the first stack over here. Now you see that in the first stack we have inserted 2 elements, so the top element is 2. So in this case it should return 2. So if I run it, you'll see that in this case it returns 2. Now after pop method over here, if I run, for example, pick method for this stack over here, the first stack, in this case it should return the 1, because in this case top element is removed from the stack, so that's why it's going to return 1 in this case. So I'm just going to copy this code from here and paste it over here. Instead of result, I'm going to put result 1, and instead of pop I'm going to call pick method. So if I call pick method over here, you see that first it's going to return 2, then it's going to return 1, because 2 is removed from the stack and the next top element in the first stack is 1. So everything works perfect. Now if I change the index of this 0 to 1 and for pick method also to 1, run our code, you'll see that the top element in the second stack is 5. So first it's going to return 5, then the next element is 4. So after removing 5, it's returning 4 over here. So if I do the same operation for the last stack over here, for example, if I put over here 2 and here also 2, in this case you'll see that first it's going to return 8 because we have only one element in the third stack. So then it's going to say that the stack is empty. So if I run our code, you see that first it returns 8, so which is this element, top element in our third stack. Then it says that the stack is empty and it's turning -1 in this case. So everything works the way that we want. So with this we have completed this lecture. So in this lecture we have created 3 stacks using one array over here. Then we have implemented all methods for the stack for these 3 stacks over here based on the stack number parameter, which takes as the index of these stacks over here. Now hopefully everything clear about this question. So this was one of the questions that asked by famous companies during the interviews. So with this solution I hope everything is clear about this question. So see you in the next question.